use the pen tool, learn how to use the pen tool, create, some sort of interesting icon, and, just see what you can come up with and, show it to people, because, the idea is that, people a lot of times are impressed, by something that you thought might not be any good. And again, this is a project I enjoyed very much, and from start to finish, it's something that, again, is not easy. It's not something that you can just throw together in one night, but it's something that if you spend the time to do and you learn the program and you're willing to, combine the images and, and redo things until you find an image that's really interesting, then you can come up with an interesting method. It's something that, nobody has maybe ever seen before. So that's basically my portion of the project. Again, I wanted to sort of take, what Jeff was talking about and carry it just a step further. Because again, this is like a basic talk. It's not something that we want to get too in depth on, because essentially you could spend forever learning the programs and you probably never exhaust all of the options. And given the fact that Adobe with their Creative Suite bundles all of the programs together, it gives you the opportunity to create anything you want. And playing with it on your own is a lot of fun. So it's something that I enjoy very much, and I'm happy to to be going into a field where there always needs to be something designed. So the idea is that you'll be able to find a job designing something, and if it's a job that allows you some sort of creative freedom, then perhaps you think back to this method. Perhaps you think back to it and say, oh, I remember doing this matrix method, come up with some interesting images. They want to design a new company logo or something. Maybe I can come up with something good. So it's something that, if you have the creative power, you can come up with a good product.
I guess.
So pretty much we just want to do an overview, basically, of just some different quick things you can do. We'll put up some of. I'll bring up the two websites again, and I highly encourage you to do any kind of Google searches or on GIMP or Photoshop. Any tutorials that you would find can be applied to either GIMP or Photoshop, and vice. They can go both ways. You just kind of got to figure out what tools work with what and such. Definitely the two best sites you can go to right now are just adobe.com and gimp.org, which will give you a good place to start. For right now, though, we're going to open up to questions. Yes?
I guess I don't understand, not being a graphic design anything. What's the difference between layers and layer masks?
Well, layers are just the stack, I guess, that you have of images. But you could have an image that has no transparency to it, so it could be completely opaque and cover up the image underneath it. If you add a layer mask to that layer, then it just takes whatever black and white image you use as the layer mask, and depending on how dark it is, it's more transparent for that layer. So if you have a completely black layer with a layer mask that is whatever black and white image you want, wherever it's darker on the layer mask, if the layer underneath it is going to be white, it would be whiter in that area.
So it's like a way of applying attributes that weren't originally there to a layer?
Right, it's kind of a basic way of like almost directly playing with the alpha of the colors. So you have red, green, and blue, and then alpha. Any other questions?
Yes. I don't know anything about creating, or I'm a terrible artist, so when I do art, I usually just play with filters a lot. And my question is, how does GIMP's filters compare to Photoshop's filters? Adobe has huge resources to spend on researching, how to actually do filters correctly. And, do they look comparable, or is one better than the other?
For that, I'll show you a few examples. You're gonna have to help me out with this.
Yeah, man. Sure.
I don't know Photoshop.
Like if you apply the same filter to the same image in GIMP, does it look worse than in Photoshop?
That's gonna require a lot of playing around with both. If you want to, that's gonna be requiring playing around with a lot of both programs. I found just from doing Photoshop tutorials in GIMP that some of the filters I wasn't able to find, but using other methods I was able to reproduce what they would look like. And again, the nice thing with GIMP is that it's open source, so if you know how to develop and you know you want a filter, you want a new script, you can just write it up. You don't know how to program?
No, I don't know how filters work.
Okay. Let's start with a new image. A slight difference between the filters and the scripts. The filters are actual plugins that you would write in probably something like C or something like that, that would actually go through and might even manipulate even each pixel according to whatever algorithms you would want. It's entirely up to your coding ability. The script is going to use whatever plugins you already have in just a certain order. So it'll just use the filters with whatever numbers it wants to put in. So that's the two differences between the scripts and the filters. One thing I like to do sometimes, and what's really nice, is to just start off with something like rendering a cloud plasma, and it gives you kind of a tie-dye looking image, and it's usually a very nice spot to start off with, and that you can get a very random looking picture. Looks very, I guess, much more natural because it's not like a repeated image. And then you can play with the colors, colorifying it. And I think this was actually something that I was trying to do in a Photoshop tutorial, and you can't see it that well. Huh. Normally you would see a lot more difference between the blue on my screen. Turn the contrast up a little bit. Okay, that filter is just plasma, and then you could do distort. And have kind of a pond-looking image, and that's just some of the filters in GIMP that I could use. Would you be able to recreate that?
Now.
You can do it.
Not now, but yeah, more than likely it would be pretty easy.
Can you just share like the plasma and some of the filters that you would have for that?
On that topic, have you guys ever had one filter that you have no idea if any other programs have ever done it? Like, was there one thing that just blew you away that one of the other program had? You can say no, that's okay.
No, not really. Not that I can think of. Most filters that if I've ever seen on Photoshop, though I wouldn't be able to do it as easily in GIMP,
Right.
I might be able to find some workaround to recreate what it did.
Now, one huge difference is that, Photoshop plugins that I've seen pirated online cost a lot of money as opposed to all free, or is there any kind of market for people to create GIMP plugins and sell those off?
I have not seen any closed-sourced GIMP for app plugins. I believe actually you install the source.c file. So it actually is a .c file that you would actually compile and install into GIMP. I should have mentioned that also. Yes.
I have sort of a related question about GIMP. What modes or image modes are available? Like in Photoshop, you can work with CMYK or process pretty color. You can work in RGB, index color, lab color, and some other choices, grayscale. And did that, what choices are in that realm?
There's only RGB, grayscale, and indexed, really for GIMP at this point.
I have a similar, sort of related question. With a lot of open source products, they try and mirror the closed source products. They try and make it as identical as, totally interoperable, so one person can go from closed source to open source. Does GIMP try and mirror Photoshop as much as possible? I mean, I know the layouts are different, but if Photoshop adds a feature, does GIMP go right out and add that feature as well, or does GIMP try and be a different program?
I'm not positive on that because I don't know Photoshop well enough to really be able to say that GIMP has mimicked them. I know a lot of people who have used Photoshop who have tried GIMP really dislike it because of at least version 1.x, that it was all different windows. Every single thing that you would work with in the program was opened in a new window, and Photoshop is all generally in one window, even though it has windows inside that window. Don't ask me how that's one window. There is actually a project out there right now called GIMP Shop, where someone has taken GIMP for Mac and basically played around with what the tools are called and where the menu system and the basic layout to make it look more like Photoshop, to get people to switch over, actually. I don't know why you'd want to switch over when you have Adobe on Mac. Yes.
Has there been any effort into making like a compatibility layer for GIMP to use Photoshop plugins?
Say that again?
Okay, since you have to do things different ways with GIMP as in Photoshop, has there been any way to port over plugins from Photoshop or have compatibility layer that runs on top of it that will...
Not that I know of, actually.
You should do that.
I'll get on it. Just for you. Yes.
What do you guys know about fractals and like how they're made and why? Like, does GIMP have like, is the fractal kind of like a filter? Does it apply a certain like algorithm to something, or is it just like an image you have to work with?
Actually, I'll open up the Fractal Explorer for you in GIMP.
To be honest with you, I don't use filters that much. I don't really have a need.
He's too elite.
I was just messing around there, showing you different things.
I love filters.
I should have a question. I use a lot of filters. What is...
You mean that's all you use?
Talk to me.
What's a real designer's opinion on, I mean, do they tend to look down on, is filters like sort of a, that's an amateur thing?
Are filter users like the script kiddies?
Filtering is not something that's, unless you have a real good reason for it, and unless, you're using it appropriately for the project that you're working on, most of the time, it's just a no-no, because it's something that is, a lot of times so artificial looking that it's not going to make people all that, excited. It's not going to, a lot of times it won't really make a difference between, making somebody like something they would normally hate. If you have a picture of someone you don't like, putting a filter on them and making them look different, it's not going to make you like the person any better. And so no, I mean, I personally don't use filters that much. I think they're cool to play around with. I just don't, for my design projects and whatnot, I just don't have a real use for them most of the time.
I'll get back to showing the Fractal Explorer filter that I've just been told off on. And pretty much what this is, they do have an interface for the parameters and for the colors, but one thing with fractals is if you don't have all your numbers right, it doesn't always come up with something that looks nice. Just every once in a while, do the numbers actually add up right to make something that actually looks nice. So they have actually pre-selected ones. So this one's kind of neat. And then you can come back over to the colors, and if you want to, you can actually apply a different color to it. And you can see it in the preview window right there, different colors to it. You can play around